Let's welcome in the one and only Mike Fisher on the Diamond Factory hotline. Good morning, Michael. How have you been?
Outstanding, boys. I'm enjoying the Bobby Belt show. And I also want to give a quick thank you to you guys. We did that Do It for Dirt project not too long ago with Shan and RJ, and the three of us raised something like $1 billion.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, I appreciate you guys pitching on that. And what I love about it is, doesn't matter what radio station or newspaper you work for, we're all kind of pitching in together. So thank you guys very much for that.
Well, that was a one-time thing, so enjoy it. We're not doing it. We won't be there again. We're going all the way out to Frisco. So hope the Tolos enjoyed it. No, I always love partying with Fish. All right, Mike, vote on the poll question. Would you, and then we're going to ask you, would you tag Tony Pollard for $10 million?
I think the Dalton Schultz argument is easy. I said this last year. I could have gotten O.J. Howard for $3 million to do a lot of the things that Dalton Schultz does. And I don't mean that as an insult to him. He's made himself into a player that somebody's going to probably pay $14 million to. And Tony Pollard should be very pleased with himself, too. He waited, and then he produced at a Pro Bowl level. But I just got done watching not only this year's Chiefs, but what is it, Bobby, like 6 years of Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And outside of Clyde for a minute there, they never even bother with a running back. They just find a guy. Then we went back and looked at Mike McCarthy's Packers. And for 8 straight years, except for Eddie Lacy, a second-round pick, they were playing Jags every year at running back. Now, one of them, Aaron Jones, turned out to be really good. But the Mike McCarthy Packers never spent on a running back high, or rarely did. And the Andy Reid Chiefs almost never did. The Cowboys might want to borrow some of those smart ideas. I would not tag or pay Tony Pollard $10 million.
What will the Joneses do?
I think they will. And listen, their habit, Dalton Schultz to me establishes that they will. I think they think it's a very useful tool to keep a guy around and evaluate him more. I think there's some point where you're over evaluating guys. Why aren't they preemptively doing new contracts for CeeDee Lamb and Trayvon Diggs? And they almost never do. They did it with Zeke. They did it with Jalen Smith. And otherwise, under Stephen Jones, they want to sit back and watch this thing grow and see how it grows. And to do that with Tony Pollard, you would have to tag him, at least as a placeholder, as you try to negotiate a longer-term deal.
What's wrong, Choppy?
Well, no, I can't. I just don't want. I can't.
Well, he's saying what he thinks they'll do.
Oh, I know. That's the problem.
Mike wouldn't do it.
No, I know. That's the issue.
I wouldn't do it because I believe that in the 3rd round or the 5th round, you know what? Jerick McKinnon, I think he's a free agent in Kansas City. He's 31 and he's Pollard-like, and they just got him off the scrap heap. I don't know, Bobby, what they're paying him. $1 million, $2 million, whatever, veterans minimum, whatever it is. So I can get a $2 million guy to do what Tony Pollard at $10 million could do. Now, it's got to be the right guy. I'm not saying it's easy to find him, but they got McKinnon and Pacheco, a scrap heap free agent and a 7th-round pick in Kansas City. And the only issue I think the Cowboys have to wrestle with there is, well, maybe in Green Bay they got away with Jag running backs because they had Aaron Rodgers. And maybe in Kansas City they did the same because they have Patrick Mahomes. And no, the Cowboys don't exactly have that at quarterback.
Go ahead.
Do they have the guts, though, to try?
I don't think it's gutsy to say goodbye to Dalton Schultz. In fact, didn't they go and acquire 2 tight ends who already established that they can be Dalton Schultz Juniors?
Right.
If you do that at tight end ×2, why can't you do that at running back ×1?
Zeke gone?
Yeah, there's a couple levels here. I think G-Bag Nation the other day suggested maybe you just move on. And the reason that I support that to some degree is you're either doing it this year or next year. And so I'm kind of rip off the Band-Aid guy. Now, we all lived through how difficult that was for Jerry on Ware, on Romo, on Dez. The Tyron Smith goodbye that's going to be heartbreak city in this building. That's going to be one of the most emotional things that the Jones family's ever done when they say goodbye to Tyron Smith. And Zeke deserves to be in that category. What a football warrior, a 2-time rushing champion who gets kind of I think, a bad rap because the contract was an albatross in some people's eyes. But the fact is, I go back to Emmitt Smith getting his contract in 1993. And he told me that spring, he said, I'm going to ask for quarterback money. Now, at that time, that was like $3 million is what the great Dan Marino was making. $3 million, $4 million, whatever. Well, Emmitt got it. He got quarterback money after the Cowboys, of course, started 0-2. But you know why nobody remembers that as being an outrageous deal? Because the Cowboys won.
Right.
If only for Zeke's sake, at $15 million a year, if only the Cowboys would have won a Super Bowl, nobody would ever gripe about Ezekiel Elliott's price tag. But now here we are. It didn't happen. Now it's time to gripe, and it might be time to rip off the Band-Aid.
Mike Fisher here on 105.3 The Fan. All right, you blew up the internet yesterday. We had to figure out where this report was coming from, and then we trace it all the way back to Old Fish Sports. Cowboys intrigued by quarterback CJ Stroud in draft. It is on all the national sites. What are you doing? What are you doing?
What the hell are we doing here?
What are you doing?
The one thing we're not doing is trying to presuppose that I'm saying the Cowboys are dumping Dak for CJ Stroud. Our story on CowboysSI.com says nothing of the sort. It's simply a factual report. This is going to be a league buzz thing. You're going to hear about it more. The Cowboys are doing a lot of studying on CJ Stroud, the Ohio State quarterback, and they're intrigued by him. I will say this, though, before anybody says, well, that's impossible, absolutely impossible, because I think, what do we think? He's going to go in the top 7? That would make it very difficult with the Cowboys picking at 26. They already have Dak Prescott. They are married to Dak Prescott. But it did take him 2 years, Sean, to consummate their marriage with Dak Prescott in contract negotiations.
Yeah.
It did. It wasn't like, oh, here's $40 million automatically with no worries about it. And we are coming off a year. I don't want to go all recency bias on us, but we are coming off a year in which this offense, not just Dak, but this offense was guilty of a lot of interceptions, and that's problematic. Go back to the Packers, though, and what they did at quarterback. And I know some Cowboy fans say, I don't want to do what the Packers did, but I kind of do. The Packers for 30 years had a star quarterback. And when they had Brett Favre, they drafted Aaron Rodgers, and nobody liked it, but it worked out. They had Aaron Rodgers, and then they drafted Love, and nobody liked it. Plus, nobody likes Aaron Rodgers because he never showers. He stinks. But it's given them a 30-year window. So if you can have Aaron Rodgers and draft Love, and you can have Brett Favre and draft Aaron, you could theoretically have Dak Prescott and also draft his heir. It's possible.
So could there be some misdirection here on their part? Saying they're intrigued by CJ Stroud, they're looking at him, but what they're really trying to do is get a look at his wide receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, as long as we're not suggesting that the Cowboys necessarily are the ones who told me this. I don't want to paint that picture wrongly. But could the Cowboys be throwing chum in the water to other teams, and then other teams are getting the impression? Sure. And that's part of the game here. Jerry, a long time ago, talked about throwing chum. Like to throw chum in the water, Mr. RJ. And he must have gotten that from Jaws, because I never even heard of chum in the water until Jaws came out. But so maybe. But to be intrigued by a 6'3", 215-pound quarterback from Ohio State, that does fit the Cowboys mold. Ohio State, Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Baylor, the Cowboys know those guys, and they like those guys. So this is not a C.J. Stroud to Dallas prediction. This is not a Dak-hating take. It's simply a statement of fact. The Cowboys are intrigued by the quarterback. And as we're all going about building our boards, RJ, you're a quarterback guru. When you build your board, aren't you going to be fascinated on what we do with Young versus Stroud and beyond? It's part of the fascination of how we're doing this. So I'm telling you right now, don't be surprised if the Cowboys have Stroud really high on their board, I suppose above Young. And then one more thing. What if somehow, some way, we do get to pick 26 and Stroud is somehow miraculously there? You better be prepared to decide what you're going to do.
Yeah, and Fish, I mean, like you referenced there, them having potentially having CJ Stroud really high on the board, potentially even as high as above Bryce Young. That's no different than like the team goes in here, they're going to stack their board regardless. So, like, a couple years ago, they were really intrigued by Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. They like those guys a lot.
Yeah.
And they would have been near the top of their board, but that's part of their process of just like, evaluating the entire draft because that's their job, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And if we find out that the Cowboys don't like player X, they don't have an infinity class, we're going to report that too. That doesn't mean that if player X slips from the second round to the fifth round, they don't take him. So not a prediction here, just a statement of fact inside the NFL. There is an affection for that player. And then there are decisions to be made anyway about what you're going to do when it comes to number 2 quarterback. When Jerry says we're going to draft a quarterback this year, and he just come out and said it, are we talking about Ben DiNucci? Or are we talking about somebody that can play for 10 years as a backup, like a Colt McCoy? Or are we talking about somebody who can do what the Packers did for years, where Ron Wolf would throw that dart at another quarterback? And about every other year, they came up with a Matt Flynn. They came up with Mark Brunell. I mean, they came up with starting NFL quarterbacks by making sure they always threw that dart. I guarantee you the Cowboys will try to do that, and not in the 7th round this year.
But, Mike, would you feel comfortable putting it in? I separate it into 2 categories, as Bobby is suggesting. Oh, well, Trevor Lawrence, the Cowboys like him and no shot in hell. Or they may be interested in finding a way to move up to get him. Like, is it a casual, well, yeah, we like him, but it's impossible. It's a pipe dream. Or, yeah, we like him.
Yeah, it's been suggested to me that there's too much studying going on for us to just say, well, of course they like him. They like everybody. It's more.
Okay.
It has more legs than that.
Okay.
It's more substantial than that. Otherwise, I'd write a story today saying they like Bijan Robinson. We'd write a story tomorrow. You guys would announce the day after that they like the guy who's the top-rated defensive end. Do you trade up and give up pieces for this, or if you're in this locker room right now, because they're making CeeDee Lamb. And Micah Parsons says it every day. And Diggs says it so often. We need help. We need weapons. We need help. Do you spend a high pick, wherever it is, move up, 26, whatever, on somebody who's not going to be a starter for you? This is why Aaron Rodgers, of course, is always so upset in Green Bay. They kept drafting guys that weren't going to help him. As the Cowboys have a big decision to make. Do they want to keep the quarterback window open and keep the competitiveness window open by at some point here getting an heir to Dak Prescott? Or are you going to really believe Stephen and Jerry when they go, oh, Bobby, he's probably going to be our quarterback for the next 10 years?
We'll see about that.
That's hyperbole. That means Dak Prescott's going to play when he's 39? I don't know why the Cowboys even bother saying that. And listen, I'm not anti-Jones, as you guys may be aware. But Stephen comes out the other day and says, year after year after year, time after time after time, Dak is going to be our Troy, our Romo, our Staubach. Now, we'll leave Romo out of this. To compare Dak Prescott to Roger Staubach and Troy Aikman is not only unfair to Roger and Troy, it does no favors to Dak.
Michael, thank you. It's great to have you back on, and we'll check in again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, boys.